Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the nth variable. This is Nitin Nair and I want to start off by thanking you all once again for the kind of support and love that you've shown in whichever way you have likes, shares, subscribes, etc. etc. Thank you so much. It's this love and support that actually helps me keep going and trying to create something brand new to help you find what's your nth variable that can take you to God mode level of success. First things first, we've started on a new video series which you probably might have seen. That's called Ask Anything. So you can go ahead and send me a DM, a message on Facebook, a comment, post anywhere, and ask me a question, and I'll be more than happy to pick that up and answer that probably once a week. We got some really good response on our first video, and I hope to get a lot more on the coming videos so that we can make that a regular thing. Now, this video, I initially thought that let's do something more on the course and talk more about the theory behind the nth variable, what the God mode level of success is, because that's a lot of based on the questions that we get. But then I figured I'll do something different. Now, one of the modes in which we convey the message about the nth variable and achieving that God mode level of success is through mythology. And mythology is something that I've loved as a kid, I've explored as an adult, and I stopped looking at it more as a hobby and started diving deeper into it. So that led to me launching the website called mythlok.com. You can go and check it out. We have a YouTube channel as well as a podcast where we cover mythological characters from all around the world. Now, the scope behind that channel is to see how similar we all are, regardless of where we are geographically, and try and figure out what's that missing link between cultures that really unite us in the long run. So based on that, we come across a lot of stories, a lot of concepts from various religions, various cultures, various geographical locations that are quite intrinsic to them, but we can learn a lot. Now, the first thing that I'm going to be covering today is something from very close to me, very close to my heart, from Indian mythology, and probably from my famous, need to really go ahead and propagate true meaning behind all these mythological stories from around the world and try to see if there are parallels. So if there is a character similar to someone in your mythology from where you're from, please do let us know in the comments, and we would be happy do a comparative video on this later. Now, the character I'm going to be talking about is from my favorite epic in Indian mythology, the Mahabharata. It's Arjuna, and what I'm going to be looking at is the paradox called Arjuna. As we all know, Arjuna is the greatest warrior in the epic Mahabharata. Now, those of you who are not familiar, Arjuna is one of the 5 brothers known as the Pandavas, and he was born to the royal family of Hastinapur, which was ruled by his father, King Pandu, who then gave it up and left it in the control of his blind elder brother, Dhritarashtra, who he himself had around 100 children. So there were 5 Pandavas on one side and the 100 Kauravas on the other, which formed the crux behind the whole epic, and their enmity and the fact that despite being cousins they could never get along became the core essence behind this whole huge epic. Arjuna was a skilled warrior. His father Pandu could not conceive children, but his mother had the boon wherein she could invoke any deity or any god out there and be blessed by a child with him. So Arjuna's father was Indra, who was also known as the king of gods, who was your equivalent to Zeus in many ways, because he commanded a pantheon or a sabha of gods as well, who all worked with him, and he ruled Indraloka, which was supposedly the abode of the gods. Arjuna grew up under the training of Kripacharya, Dronacharya, and some of the greatest teachers around the world, and he was blessed by all. He was loved. He had his whole core set of values on which he never compromised, and his skills at archery and warfare were legendary. Now, the question that I want to put forward is, Arjuna was someone who you could say achieved God mode level of success. His nth variable, with my calculations, were his focus, his hard work that he put in, which almost everyone else put in, but he was also blessed by having the right people around him. That was his nth variable. He had gurus like Dronacharya and Kripacharya. He had a mentor like Lord Krishna, and he had a lot of other people who were just right for him, around him to guide him. And that nth variable is what he utilized, because if you look throughout the Mahabharata, cases where he's taken a decision on his own are limited. He's always consulted his elders, his brothers, etc. And the humility that he showed as a warrior, as probably the greatest warrior, to take advice from others rather than jumping ahead and just going about it with due to the pure belief in his skills, is very limited. And that, I believe, was his nth variable. His ability to focus as well as surround himself with right people and take their advice. In 3 different stages of his life, he's done that. Now the question asks, did he actually achieve God mode level of success with his nth variable? He did. He is considered the greatest archer or warrior of all time. So if you look at it from a pure standpoint, where did he achieve what he was? Did he become the greatest ever? Yes, he did. But now that's where the paradox actually comes in. Did he achieve it purely on the basis of his nth variable, or was it because of the lack of true competition? Now I can literally feel the comments starting. Now before you start hating on me, just listen to me as well. Now in my understanding or my reading of the Mahabharata, the contenders for the greatest archer of all time, one, Arjuna; 2, there was Karna; 3, there was Ekalavya; 4, there was Barbaric; and 5, it was Ghatotkacha. Now Ghatotkacha was more or less not a warrior, but he was, not an archer, but he was a warrior, and he was considered to be the most deadliest on the field. Now if we go back, let's go back. Ghatotkacha, why did he not end up being the greatest of all time? What was it that he could not achieve the nth variable or God mode level of success? Ghatotkacha's power, or his nth variable, that really could have put him apart from this group of 5 was magic. He was a proficient magician. Unfortunately, his magical powers increased after sunset, which is when the Rakshasas or people with Rakshasa lineage actually had their powers become enhanced. Ghatotkacha was the son of another Pandava, Bhim, with Hidimbi, who was a Rakshasi. But that actually added to his nth variable, and he has probably killed more people in the Mahabharata war than anyone else. Even while dying, when Karna actually shot the Shakti Astra on him in order to kill him because he was devastating the Kaurava army, his final act actually shows what a great warrior he was. He increased himself in size a tenfold, so that when he fell down, he crushed at least one whole section of the Kaurava army. But Ghatotkacha couldn't achieve it because he didn't capitalize on his nth variable to really reach that God mode level of success, or to be talked about on the same level as Arjuna. The next one is Ekalavya. Now, Ekalavya, you could argue, many people argue with me, you cannot consider Ekalavya to be the greatest archer of all time because he's never participated in battle. It's true. I totally agree. Ekalavya did not participate even in one battle, and that is the only reason why we do not actually talk about him on the same lines as Arjuna. What was the reason? It's because when people actually identified Ekalavya, who he was and his skills. Now the mythology goes that while the Pandava and the Kaurava princes were playing or hunting with their dogs, the dogs actually went forward, and when they came back, they found that the dogs had arrows shot right across their mouths in such a way that the dogs couldn't open their mouths, but the dogs were not harmed either. And when they went out to find who was this genius who did this, they came across Ekalavya, who was learning archery in front of a clay model of Dronacharya. When they asked him who he was and who taught him all this, he said, Dronacharya is my guru. And the reason why I am doing it in front of a clay model is because Dronacharya refused to teach me because he only taught princes and royalty. The book says that Dronacharya was enraged that someone had learnt stuff from him without the proper channels and without the proper stuff being done. But I feel that Dronacharya had two things. One, his favorite student Arjuna was no match for Ekalavya. Dronacharya knew it, and he knew that since he had always gone ahead and promoted Arjuna as the greatest warrior, he probably should make sure that still stands, and not someone who's just learned from a clay version of Dronacharya to come up on those ranks, because it doesn't speak too well about him as a teacher, because he's refused someone purely based on their social class. So what does Dronacharya do? He goes ahead and demands the thumb of Ekalavya's right hand. Now, anyone who's done archery before know that the thumb is a crucial element in actually pulling back the arrow. Without the thumb, you're literally at a disadvantage because you only have these 4 fingers to use. So at that point, Dronacharya knew that if he asked for the thumb as Guru Dakshina or as payment for his teachings, Ekalavya can be neutralized. And that's what he did. And unfortunately, Ekalavya could not use his nth variable of learning stuff without actually being taught to his best benefit and be taught on the same lines as Arjuna, which means he couldn't achieve his God mode level. The third warrior that I want to talk about is not someone that many of you know. This is Barbaric. Now, Barbaric is an amazing warrior. He was the son of Gadolkaja, to be honest, which means the grandson of Bhim. And it was universally accepted that he was the greatest archer of all time. In fact, the reason that he was not part of the war was because Krishna intervened. Now, Krishna knew that Barbaric was on his way to join the war, and he knew that Barbaric alone could destroy the other army. So Barbaric, before he set out on his journey to go ahead and join the war, he promised his mother that he will only fight on the weaker side. This is because his strengths were so high, was so unmatched, that any side he joined and would surely win. And she did not want him to join the battle and destroy anyone who's innocent. So Barbaric promised her that he would only join the army that was the weakest. And Barbaric also had with him one of the most powerful divine weapons known as the Teen Ban. The Teen Ban was a weapon in which the first arrow, when shot, would mark everything that he wanted to be killed. The second arrow would mark everything that he wanted to be saved. And the third arrow would ensure that the ones who had to be killed were killed and the other ones were saved. So this means that he could literally end the battle in around a few minutes. Before he could join one of the sides, he met with Krishna, and Krishna asked him, "So Barbaric, tell me, which side are you going to join?" So he said, "I'm going to join the Pandavas because they seem to be the weaker side because they have a smaller army." And then that's when the genius of Krishna comes into play. The diplomat, the bureaucrat, or whatever you want to call him. I love Krishna for those abilities of his. He asks Barbaric, so once you join the Pandava army, automatically the Kaurava army becomes weaker because you are the greatest warrior and you have the Teen Ban. But then when you join the Kauravas, automatically the Pandavas become weaker because you've joined. And this dilemma put Barbaric in such a confusion that he did not know what to do. He laid down in front of Krishna and said, "Please advise me. I want to take part in the war. I want to be a part of it, but I cannot break the promise I gave my mother as well." In order to ensure that humanity continued, because Barbaric was so powerful that he could literally wipe out the human race in a matter of minutes, Krishna asked him to cut his head off, and Krishna would place his head on top of a mountain where he could view the battle from day one till the end. And he agreed. So his head was cut off and placed on top of a mountain, whereby he could see the whole battle. If you ask me, well, he just was confused. at the end of the day, and the brilliance of Krishna ensured that the human race still survived. But then what happened was Barbaric is never talked on the same lines as of Arjuna and could never achieve his nth variable, which was using advanced weaponry in battle. And finally, we come to the most controversial question that has hogged thinkers all throughout history. Who was better, Arjuna or Karna? Let's look at them as on side by side, because they've literally done almost everything that they have. They both had possession of great weapons. They worked really hard to achieve where they were. From childhood, they had really struggled to learn. They practiced, they wanted to be the best, and they worked towards it. But what was it that actually made Arjuna considered to be the greatest warrior and not Karna? Well, according to legend, or according to the myths, Karna was cursed twice and cheated once. First, he was cursed by Lord Parashurama when he went to learn the art of warfare and the art of archery from him by disguising himself as a Brahmin. Now, Parashurama was not in favor of teaching Kshatriyas, and he would only teach Brahmanas the art of warfare so that they could protect themselves. And when he went in the guise of a Brahmin, and when Parashurama eventually found out, he cursed him and said, "When you most need it, whatever I've taught you, you will forget." Karna was cursed a second time. That's totally by accident when he shot an arrow and it killed a cow. And when he went to see it, there was a poor Brahmin, a hungry Brahmin, for whom the cow was the whole only source of income. And the Brahmin cursed him and said, "You will also die when you're most vulnerable, just like my cow who was stuck behind the tree and you killed him without a chance to defend or run away." And that's what happened to Karna as well. He died when his chariot got stuck in mud and couldn't move, and he was jumped down from the chariot to really free the wheel, and that's when Arjuna killed him. And then third time I say he was cheated was when Lord Indra came down in the guise of a Brahmin, and knowing Karna's generous nature, where he used to give anything to someone who asked him after his morning prayers, came and asked him for his kavacha and kundala, which was his breastplate and his earrings, which actually prevented him from dying or getting injured in battle. Now, you can say that that was a business transaction because Karna gave up the kavacha and kundala and asked for the Shakti weapon instead. But at the end of the day, the nth variable that Karna had that could have easily defeated Arjuna and could be called the greatest archer of all time was his kavacha and kundala, which he was born with. And that is why Karna still, I feel, could not be called the greatest archer of all time. Now, all of this is the paradox. So the question is, did Arjuna, or was Arjuna called the greatest warrior because the others who were finally in his total sphere or his level did not find their nth variable? Or was it because Arjuna truly deserved to be the one on top? Well, the answer to that will be in another video, which I will post in our nth variable seekers group on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. So I've shared the links below. Go ahead, join the groups to know what that paradox is. Cheers.